1 year ago today, Portland hit 116 degrees, the culmination of a heat wave that killed more than 100 people across the state. And while climate scientists say this was a rare event, they also say we should prepare.
There are likely to be more heat waves and of longer duration and of greater intensity.
So tonight, we're seeing what the city of Portland is doing to protect people from hot weather.
When they set it up, I could already feel like the air coming through. So it felt really nice knowing that we're gonna have that at the house now.
Plus, homelessness is becoming more and more of an issue on the Oregon coast. Now Astoria is trying to limit where people can camp.
There are places to go in the daytime. There's really no place to go at night.
Here's The Story.
I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. All the ways to communicate with us right there on your screen. You can email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com. If you want to get all social, you can use the hashtag TheStoryKGW on Twitter, or you can leave us a voicemail. Call our phone number, 503-226-5090. Do you remember what the weather was like 1 year ago right now? I sure do. We were in the middle of an extreme heat wave, and temperatures reached 116 degrees in Portland. That's the highest ever. I was working from home with a window air conditioner just cranking, but I walked outside just to feel that heat for a moment. We later learned more than 100 people died across Oregon from that heat. Could those extreme temperatures happen again? Meteorologist Joe Ranieri spoke with some climate scientists.
Last summer's deadly heat wave was unlike anything we've experienced in our lifetimes here in the Pacific Northwest. 3 days of record-breaking heat, one right after another. June 26th, 108 degrees. June 27th, 112. And the hottest day ever recorded at the Portland International Airport, 116 degrees on June 28th.
The heat dome actually formed in conditions similar to previous heat waves that have hit the Pacific Northwest. So what that means is that we get this ridge of high pressure that kind of centered itself over kind of off of the west coast of Washington and Vancouver Islands.
Larry O'Neill is the state climatologist and associate professor at Oregon State University.
Mostly on the
He said there were three things that made the heat dome so extraordinary.
This high pressure was just super large. It was very high intensity. It set records for basically how high the freezing level was.
During the summer, it's pretty common to see freezing levels jump up to over 10,000 feet.
And it was just the fact that the atmosphere below it was as warm as we've ever seen it.
Mount Hood stands at over 11,000 feet. Mount Rainier, the tallest peak in the Cascades, is at more than 14,000 feet in elevation. Over that 3-day stretch in June, records were shattered, including a freezing level at nearly 20,000 feet.
So if you were to take a flight from Eugene to Seattle, the plane will kind of level off at about 20,000 feet. And typically temperatures there are, minus 20 degrees Celsius or something like that.
The record-breaking temperatures also came during a time when the entire state of Oregon was under some kind of drought.
So spring last year, Oregon experienced its driest spring on record, March, April, May. And what that meant was that there was no water on the landscape basically to evaporate.
When water evaporates, it cools down the atmosphere, but there was nothing to cool us off with. Combine the heat we had with the parched landscape of the Northwest, there was only one way for our temperatures to go.
It was an unprecedented event, how warm it got. So 116 in Portland, 112 in Eugene, I think it was about 115 or so in Salem. And, people moved to the Pacific Northwest because to escape that heat. They come from California or, places in the desert Southwest or from the South. They kind of come up here because it is so nice and calm,
O'Neill also contributes the heat dome to what else?
The third factor, of course, is climate change. The Earth is just steadily warming, and so we have this baseline that just keeps going up, and so that added a few degrees as well.
So could these heat waves be something we start seeing every summer?
Heat at that extreme level is unlikely, at least in the next couple of decades. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Statistically, temperatures that high are unlikely.
Erica Fleshman is the director of the Oregon Climate Change Research Institute. She doesn't believe we are going to see a heat wave like we saw in June of last year become the norm.
So there are likely to be more heat waves and of longer duration and of greater intensity.
Both O'Neill and Fleshman agree. While we are seeing temperatures warm on a global scale, that doesn't mean we're going to be seeing these extremes year after year just yet.
By the middle of the century, so by about 2050 or 2100, towards the end of the century, This event that we had might be something more like a 1 in 10-year event or a 1 in 20-year event. So this is something that we could see multiple times during our lifetimes.
The challenging part, according to O'Neill, is going to be making sure models pick up on our warming climate.
And there have been discussions and maybe some indications from the data that perhaps the climate models are not warming up quick enough.
A challenge they have been noticing over the last several years.
Historical data record is not guiding us, is no longer a reliable guide, if ever it was, to what we can expect in the future.
What we do know for sure.
The important thing I think to keep in mind is not sort of, oh, well, it's unlikely to be 115 this summer or next summer or anything like that, but it is getting hotter steadily.
It's not just our summers here in the Pacific Northwest that are running warmer. It's across the globe where we are seeing temperatures climb year after year.
Meteorologist Joe Ranieri joins us now. Joe, we've just got through our own little mini heat wave, 3 days in the upper 90s. But what about the rest of the summer?
Well, long-range models are still suggesting from coast to coast, we're looking at temperatures to be above normal. But what's interesting, Pat, as we head into the first week of July, this is from the Climate Prediction Center, they're expecting to see much of the Pacific Northwest below normal for temperatures. And that's what I'm forecasting heading into the holiday weekend. I'm expecting to see daytime highs for basically Saturday and the early part of next week, right around the upper 60s to the low 70s. And looking at our past historical heat waves that we've seen over the last 20 to 30 years, they typically start to arrive the third week in July or later. So by the later part of July and into August is typically when we see our record-breaking temperatures. So it's going to be interesting to see what we get to see here in the Pacific Northwest over the next couple of months.
Thanks, Joe. I remember 32 years ago when I got here covering the 4th of July in a ski parka. It was that cold. All right, let's get back to the heat. As a result of last year, the city of Portland decided to spend more than $11 million to buy air conditioners and heat pumps for as many as 15,000 low-income residents. This week and last, some of those much-needed units are finally being installed.
In the 6800 block of Northeast Killingsworth this week, a very special delivery was underway. The box being moved here holds an air conditioner. More importantly, it holds the promise of cool air for a family of 10 living in a tiny space.
How's it been the last couple of days before?
Pretty hot, yeah. And we have, as you can see, a little fan that we used to use here. I would take it to my room to use for my daughter because she would get really fussy, and then my brother would use it once in a while also. So we'd kind of have to fight about a little fan. But now we have this, which I'm really grateful for.
Leslie Pook lives here with her family. They've already endured sweltering heat over the weekend. But Monday, as the temperature soared again towards 100 degrees, this family would be protected.
Yeah, when they set it up, I could already feel the air coming through. So it felt really nice knowing that we're gonna have that at the house now, and not having to open the windows at night and someone stay awake so that the others can sleep fresh.
The installation is part of a City of Portland plan to put 15,000 air conditioners or heat pumps into low-income homes over 5 years. The program is just beginning after a rough start in which the company overseeing the entire program was awarded the city contract, then had it taken away after the Oregonian revealed issues with the company's leader. The program is funded by the Portland Clean Energy Fund. That's a tax passed by city voters back in 2018. Large retailers pay a 1% tax, which creates a fund of about $60 million a year. The air cooling plan is one way the money is being spent. The program is estimated to cost $11 million. Delivering these machines and the gift of cool air is rewarding for Ricardo Morano, who's working with the nonprofit called Verde.
We're just trying to help community. It's getting really hot, and just trying to get as many units as possible in this next few weeks.
To qualify, people need to live in the city of Portland and make 60% or less of the median income. For a family of 4, that means $63,900 or less. Residents also have to meet 2 of these 3 requirements: be over 60 years old, live alone, or have a medical condition that makes them more vulnerable to the heat. The work is just beginning, but for everyone who gets a delivery like this, it is a welcome and potentially life-saving gift. Maylin Jimenez is helping with the outreach and knows the impact.
Yeah, last Friday they installed a couple around this neighborhood, and the families text me. They were like, I'm really grateful that I got one of this, and they're really thankful, and the kids are really happy.
So that's good news. By the way, to see how to apply for those free air conditioners, go to kgw.com, check on our web story about this. We have a link in there for that. Now to our homeless crisis. It's certainly not confined to the Portland area. Many cities on the coast are trying to figure out how to deal with more people there living on the streets. Astoria just passed some new rules for camping in public places. Here's Blair Best.
It's public places like here on Commercial Street in downtown Astoria, where people are now only allowed to camp from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. But those living on the streets say they have nowhere else to go.
This doesn't help nothing.
There are places to go in the daytime. There's really no place to go at night.
I don't feel like it's a good idea for the city and or anywhere to say you can't be someplace if there's no designated place for someone to be.
Last week, the city of Astoria passed an ordinance which allows camping on public property between the hours of 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. People can use sleeping bags, small tents, and tarps, but can't take up more than 50 feet of space. Ozark ORAC runs Lifeboat Services, one of the only organizations helping those experiencing homelessness in the city.
It really sucks, you know. In my opinion, it's inhumane. You know, they're just moving people along, displacing people so they can be where? They can go to the next place to get displaced from.
The problem is nobody knows when or where this stuff's happening.
Rob spent 7 years on the streets. He doesn't think the ordinance will make a difference.
People are going to sleep when they want to. They really can't stop that. And a lot of people that are living on the streets are on their last leg. I know quite a few people out here that know they're dying.
You see that hotel over there?
John has lived on the streets in Astoria for 10 years. Now he lives in a nearby hotel. He agrees with regulating when people can sleep on public property.
I think there have to be some limits. There needs to be a place where they can congregate, and usually that's in one of several public parks.
Sometimes it's quality of life issues, behavioral type of things, public intoxication.
The police department gets numerous calls every day from residents and local business owners complaining about those living on the streets.
I think that the ordinance will give us another tool to address some of the camping issues. However, it's not a permanent solution.
Some of these groups of unhoused peoples have made our residents and visitors and business owners feel unsafe, and that's unacceptable.
Mayor Bruce Jones hopes the ordinance will help both residents and the homeless.
It's helping the people who are screaming about the fact that they can see homeless people.
There's arguments on both sides, and I understand why folks who are advocates for the unhoused would not want any ordinances that place any restrictions whatsoever on camping on public places. But from the perspective of the residents of our community, of our visitors, and our business owners, it's unacceptable to have people allowed to simply camp out for long periods of time.
In July, the city will discuss a list of places where camping will also soon be prohibited. In Astoria, Blair Best, KGW News.
Where do you draw the line between church and state? A new Supreme Court ruling involving a praying football coach in Washington might make that line a little more blurry.
I find the decision to be somewhat troubling. It has really reversed about 60 years of precedent dealing with school prayer.
When the story continues.
Welcome back. Keep sending your questions and comments to us. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or give us a call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. We really do enjoy hearing from you. Let us know what you're thinking about. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the phrase separation of church and state. It typically has to do with the first part of the First Amendment that says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So, does that mean a high school football coach can lead prayers on the field after games? Or is he crossing the line that separates church and state? Well, this week the U.S. Supreme Court sided with the coach, saying he should not have lost his job over that. Drew Mickelson has the story from where it all started, outside Seattle in Bremerton, Washington.
Former Bremerton High School JV football coach Joe Kennedy says what he did on this field was voluntary, but the school district disagreed. When the district warned Coach Joe Kennedy to stop leading his on-field prayers, he refused. The Bremerton School District suspended him, and his contract was not renewed the next season. The coach sued, saying his rights had been violated. And with a 6-3 majority vote, the U.S. Supreme Court agreed.
Thank God and everybody that supported me throughout this. I mean, it's just great news for the entire nation.
The district argued the prayers, led by the team's head coach, compelled or coerced players to participate unwillingly to get in good with the coach. The district offered Kennedy other places to pray as well.
What kind of message does that send, that I should hide who I am and my beliefs? Bremerton is one of the most diverse schools and inclusive schools around. And, everybody should be, free to be themselves, no matter what it is.
Parents all around this country should be afraid right now.
Attorneys for Americans United for Separation of Church and State, who argued against the coach's case, fear the implications of the decision.
Can we expect to see prayer in the classroom under this ruling today?
We think it opens the door to coercive prayer in K through 12 classrooms across the country.
Where else is that going to pop up in public spaces?
Bremerton Reverend Greg Refner traveled to Washington, D.C. with other Kitsap County clergy, speaking out against the coach. While the Reverend supports prayer, he says it should not be happening at school.
I think there are a whole number of better, more faithful ways to share one's faith than to do what Coach Kennedy did.
Kennedy says he went through all of this just to get his job back. He lives in Florida now, but says he would be on the first flight back to Bremerton if he were offered his old job again. A spokesperson for the Bremerton School District says that decision has not been made yet.
That was Drew Mickelson reporting. Now that we've heard from both sides, let's bring in an expert on this kind of case. I talked to Willamette Law professor Stephen Green, who specializes in First Amendment law and religion.
Well, I find the decision to be somewhat troubling. The court has done a couple of things. One, it has really reversed about 60 years of precedent dealing with school prayer. Back in 1962-63, the Supreme Court said school-sponsored, school-directed prayer involving students was unconstitutional. And the court has pretty much held to that principle up until now. A football coach is a school employee. A football coach is like a teacher. The players are his students. The football field is his classroom. And so consequently, for a teacher to take some time while they're still on duty and start demonstratively praying in front of students, I think most people would find very troubling. But the Supreme Court, by 6-3 vote, said it's constitutional.
Green there says in the past the court has called schools a coercive environment. That means even if something is voluntary, like praying, students can still feel pressured to participate since teachers and coaches are authority figures. So, what's this mean for the future?
It is going to raise a question on how far employees in public schools can go to demonstrate their own religiosity. I mean, no one's ever questioned whether a teacher cannot wear a cross or wear a yarmulke. Certainly that's permissible, or even bow their head and pray at lunch briefly. The school district had provided other accommodations for him to pray. He wanted to pray right there in front of the crowds at the end of the game. And to me, that's no different from a classroom teacher telling the students, all right, take the next 10 minutes and read from your book and then that classroom teacher getting down on his or her knees by her desk and praying in front of the fellow students in the classroom. I see no difference between that. And that's more or less what the court has done. So it's opening the door to a lot of claims, and we're going to see a lot of litigation of teachers saying, no, I have the right to pray in my quote unquote free time, even though I'm on duty. And that really turns the Supreme Court jurisprudence in this area on its head. The concern has been about trying to protect school children from undue pressure. But now it seems like the emphasis is on these putative rights of the teachers to pray when and where they want to.
So what do you think? Do you agree with the Supreme Court's decision? Do you think prayer should be allowed in school, or should it be kept as far away as possible from any public institution? It's an interesting question. Let me know your thoughts. You could email the story. Our address is thestory@kgw.com, or call our voicemail, 503-226-5090. When the story continues, we're exploring a part of Oregon history you might know nothing about. Lesbians came to Eugene to form their own communities to escape persecution elsewhere. Today's the 53rd anniversary of the Stonewall riots, which is why June is Pride Month for the LGBTQ community. So tonight we're going to dive into some of that history here in Oregon, specifically involving lesbians who lived in communes in Eugene. Here's Galen Etlin.
A snapshot of history
There were lots and lots of lesbians in Eugene. Just found a home.
can tell you a lot about a place.
I quit my job and I moved to Oregon.
We bought a VW bus and then we just took off across the country.
This documentary is part of the Outliers and Outlaws Project, archiving a unique slice of Oregon life from the 60s to the 90s.
Eugene was considered a lesbian mecca.
Judith Rayskin is a professor at University of Oregon who has helped gather more than 80 interviews from lesbians who made their own communities in Eugene and Southern Oregon in the face of persecution elsewhere.
Live more authentically.
Women formed accepting communes, complete with mechanics, construction crews, tree planters, food production, even a kung fu school.
They ran this town.
Really changed the course of Oregon history and LGBTQ history.
Courtney Herman is a professor at Portland State University and a documentarian, helping build this virtual archive.
Our history as LGBTQ people has been broadly glossed over.
Why is this kind of project so important to you?
If those archives aren't there, it's as if that history didn't happen.
Our stories, I think, humanize us, breaking down barriers for folks to just be who they are.
The archive primarily focuses on the productivity and joy in these peaceful communities, but also highlights the resilience. Lesbian activists bravely came out to fight anti-LGBTQ measures that would have labeled homosexuality perverse.
It was bad. Like if you'd go try to collect petition signatures and people would spit at you. We went through it.
The good thing about it is it got us to be organized.
These stories are really relevant to all of us.
Liz Lawrence is with the Oregon Community Foundation, helping support the Outliers and Outlaws project, working to uplift voices still fighting for equity today.
How we can all participate in making life better for all Oregonians.
The archive project now lives online, with plans to eventually expand to an exhibit at U of O and fundraise to keep this history alive.
I really want the world to be a better place.
A message of hope.
Not in the closet is liberating. And how I wish that would be for everybody, that we would walk into the world and find out that we were the same as everybody else. I'm going to cry.
And a snapshot of humanity.
Because all these divisions are artificial,
Can really tell you a lot about this place. Galen Etlin, KGW News.
Keep sending your questions and comments to The Story at kgw.com. When we come back, how you can help our community. Let's help a community. This week, our Hey Help campaign goes to Fish of Vancouver. They're a food pantry that's been around for more than 50 years. They feed more than 1,000 families a month, but they say their inventory right now is quite low, and the number of people who need their help is increasing and has been going up for the last few months. To donate, turn on your phone's camera. Hold it up to the QR code there on your screen. It'll take you to a donation page, or you could always go to kgw.com/heyhelp. Last night, we took our show on the road and did it live from Vancouver. It was the first time we've ever done that with The Story, and we had a great time doing it. I hope you enjoyed it. Many of you told us that you did like it. Lynn wrote in to say, the Vancouver story was wonderful, uplifting, honest, showcasing the best of what we're trying to do here. Your interview with our mayor, Ann Ogle, showed her as extremely personable, smart, and well-informed, which I've experienced personally from public meetings. Thank you for that. And Mary added, what a refreshing change. For so many years, we felt as though we were viewed as the ugly step-sibling to Portland. We are not without our warts and problems, but we have a strong leadership team that's working hard to address those issues. Appreciate you making the effort to shine a light on our community. Well, you're very welcome, and we enjoyed it. We'd love to hear from you on where you think we should go, what stories we should tell, what questions we should ask. Shoot me an email. Let me know if your city or your town needs some attention from The Story. In the meantime, that's the end of our program. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, The Story, our story, well, that never ends. I'll see you tomorrow.
This is KGW News at 6:30.
Nothing justifies this horrific crime.